30 seconds to torch jet.
TD, this is RSO on Channel 5. We're ready to move forward with that plan.
Go for main engine start.
It's July 7th, 2016, and Dr. Kate Rubins is about to blast off for a mission to the International Space Station. She and her crew sit inside the Soyuz shuttle. They're packed inside, actually.
TD, RSO, Channel 5.
Everything nominal on board.
In the Soyuz, you're just squished up. You know, your knees are basically around your ears. You're in this tiny fetal position ball strapped in with cargo all around you.
10, 9.
And that's where I had a lot of thoughts of like how absolutely crazy it was. I mean, you are on top of what's essentially an intercontinental ballistic missile.
4, 3, 2, 1.
For the next 9 minutes, Dr. Rubins and her fellow crew members are shot up into space. It's everything you see on TV, you know, the fire coming out the bottom end of the rocket, the shaking, the jiggling, the fact that you just sort of feel like somebody's kicked you in the pants and you are leaving Earth, right? And then she begins to experience a weird sensation. You're very well tacked in, but like your arms start to float a little bit. And we usually have what we call a 0G indicator, which is one of the crewmates' kids' stuffed toy animals that we hang like from the dashboard, like the rear view mirror, and that will all of a sudden start to float. And that's our indicator that we're in zero gravity. And then your brain starts going like, where am I? What put me here? And I can't process this because, you know, you haven't grown up in microgravity. You've never felt this before. And so you can feel very disoriented and just like you're tumbling and you're falling.
And the brain gets scrambled.
30 seconds to torch jet.
It takes Dr. Rubins and her crewmates a while to adjust. And then the commander said, hey guys, look out the window. And we were so busy, you know, punching buttons and writing down numbers and doing all the things according to procedure. And he's like, just look out the window for a minute. And I had launched to space thinking, you know, it's going to be cool to see the Earth, but like, that's not why I'm there. I'm there to do scientific research and, you know, do all kinds of things for spacewalks. And I sit in mission control. I've seen it, right? I've seen it on the screen. So I looked out the window and I was absolutely blown away. Seeing the Earth, seeing how big it was, the three-dimensionality of it. It was this bright, blue, glowing ball. It's just stunningly beautiful. I actually couldn't form words because it was so different than what I was expecting. There was a sense of absolute awe. This can't be real, you know? Literally, jaws hanging down. Nobody could talk. We're just, you know, sort of drooling as we look at the Earth, and the commander was like, okay, guys, back in. Yeah, we got to get the rest of our stuff done here. Dr. Rubins went on to conduct groundbreaking scientific research during her next 115 days in space and returned a few years later for another 6 months. It was a dream come true for someone who had decided at age 5 that she wanted to become an astronaut. In the final months of that second mission, Dr. Rubins made an important decision. She would commission for an officer position in the U.S. Army Reserve and give back to the country that gave her so much. In today's episode, our hosts sit down with now MAJ Rubins to discuss how her experience with the Army has helped her, how her years of research into HIV, Ebola, and smallpox led to her career as an astronaut, and how hard it is to tie your shoelaces in zero gravity. I'm Carrie Varouhaikis, and it's time to blast off to Army Matters.
Hello, everyone. I'm your co-host, the 15th Sergeant Major of the Army, and I'm here with my good friend,
your co-host, the Lieutenant General Leslie C. Smith, the 66th Inspector General of the United States Army. Dan, how are you today, brother?
I'm doing good today. How about you?
I'm good. So, we're doing this thing. We're talking about Rocket Man. Do you know the
Rocket Man? I don't know the rest of it, though.
I had to look it up.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talking about Rocket Man today?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's jump into this, Les.
Okay.
Let's jump into this. So, as a child, did you ever want to be an astronaut?
Well, I think as a kid growing up, everybody did, but not really.
Yeah.
But, when you saw because, when we were growing up, we saw them land on the moon.
I know.
And, the space shuttles and everything was so cool. So for that, yeah. What about you, Dan?
It was big. I remember having a Saturn V rocket to play with when I was a kid.
Nice.
And, every kid dreamed of being in outer space. It was a big buzz when we grew up because it was
especially
like you said, the space race.
Yeah. Now, Dan, your son works in the space industry, right?
He does. Yeah,
right.
He's an aerospace engineer down there. Works for a company that supports NASA. Mm-hmm.
Does he do G14 classified stuff?
He does, yeah.
Okay, nice. He can't even tell you, right?
I know he has a mission jacket for the Artemis team.
Nice.
Yeah, I know he has a mission jacket, but and I know the jacket says avionics and propulsion, I think, maybe.
Okay. But, so what do you think fueled his interest for that?
Me.
Right.
Because I told him, I kind of pushed him towards engineering.
Right.
I told him he could take anything he wanted in college, but I was only paying for engineering. So kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't want him to go to school to watch football games. I wanted him to learn a skill. So, and then once he got the taste of the space stuff when he was an intern as a graduate student, then he fell in love. He fell in love. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever snuck in your son's room and put on the jacket and say, ooh, this is pretty cool?
No, I have not.
You haven't?
No.
I think you ought to one day and send us a picture.
I kind of wonder where your mind is most.
No. I mean, think about it. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, like, oh, wow, I got on a space jacket.
I mean, I like you a lot. I just haven't figured you out.
But space jacket, man, you wouldn't want to wear you want to wear his space jacket.
After all these years.
When you want to wear his space jacket. Come on.
You really know somebody.
Come on, Dan, be honest. Don't you want to wear his space jacket?
No, because I didn't earn it. I don't want to wear anything I didn't earn.
Okay.
You know me. I'm a soldier. I don't want to put any awards on I didn't earn.
Okay.
That's an award. It's an award. It's an accomplishment.
Okay. You could just try it on like, oh, this is pretty cool.
No.
Okay.
Not me.
So, Dan, the reason why we're talking about this.
Why?
At the age of 5, our guest today decided that she wanted to become an astronaut.
Like many of us.
No. And she made it a reality.
That's right. That's the difference. That's the difference.
So today's guest, just like your son, is involved with NASA and Project Artemis.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, for real.
Mm-hmm. For real.
Yeah. But as we were just talking about, she started off her experience with the Army.
And infectious diseases.
Yeah, but that led to an incredible career in space. Mm-hmm. And now with the Army Reserves.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's bring her on the show.
Okay. Major Kate Rubins, welcome to Army Matters, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Now, Kate, I know our listeners are excited to hear about your entire life story and how you got where you are today. But I want to talk about something even more important. Paperwork. Now, you actually had to fill out some paperwork during your second space mission. Tell us about it.
I actually decided to commission. While I was, I was in space. I was kind of old as dirt at that point, and it was my second space flight, and realizing I was going to come back to Earth. And the first time after I came back, there's a little bit of sort of, what do I do now, right? I mean, for the last 2.5 years, I'd been training to fly in space, and then I was in space for 6 months, working 12 hours a day, going on spacewalks, fixing the International Space Station, doing all of these incredible scientific experiments, and you come home, and NASA says, okay, you can take some time off now, just relax a little bit and do your physical therapy and your rehab. And I sat on my couch and I watched a lot of Netflix, and then I kind of went like, okay, well,
what's next? Right.
What do I do next?
Yeah.
So I knew that was going to happen. And I had been thinking a lot actually during the pandemic, I was formerly a biodefense researcher, and I worked with the Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Disease.
Yes. I've been there.
Yeah, I was feeling like, I have some skills. Maybe I can contribute. And I honestly wanted a little meaning and purpose in my life. I didn't want to come home and sit on the couch and watch Netflix. So, of course.
Okay, hold on for a second now. So back up a little bit. So you were a civilian when you started the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
So I decided to join the Army, as one does.
Nice.
This had been in my brain for a little bit because I had a friend who was an Air National Guard, and she was telling me, she's a flight surgeon, she's telling me how cool it was. And I was like, man, I've always wanted to serve. I wish I could do that, but I bet you I'm too old to do that. And then I looked it up, and as it turned out, I was 6 months away from needing an age waiver. So I was like, well, I have to get this done now. So I called my friend, Colonel Drew Morgan, and also Colonel Ann McLean, who's up in space right now. And I said, hey, guys, I want to join the Army. How do I do this? I called Drew Morgan on his birthday, and he thought I was kidding for 5 or 10 minutes. He thought I was playing the best prank on him ever. And I finally convinced him, no, I'm serious about this. And so they helped kickstart the process.
That's awesome.
So, Kate, you mentioned purpose and meaning a minute ago. I want to drill down a little bit more on that. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, I have been so lucky to be selected to be an astronaut and to be in the space program. And I honestly spend a lot of time, thinking, like, I'm just a normal human. Like, how in the world did I get this lucky, right? And I think almost every astronaut feels that way. And the U.S. has invested a lot in me. Our training is expensive. We need to learn to do a lot of operational things, and operational training does not come cheap. We spend a lot of time training, we fly, we work underwater. And so I just feel like the government has invested so much in me. They've given me all of these opportunities. I mean, normal, regular people like me don't usually have the chance to go to space. And my country's done that for me. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I'm never going to be able to pay them back, right? Something on the space station, a piece of equipment on the space station costs more than the mortgage on your house. So that's not going to happen. But what I can give is my time and my talent. And I was really feeling like I'm a biodefense researcher. That is definitely something that the Army needs. And that's a way that I can give back, really to thank my country for everything that they've invested in me and the trust that they put in me.
That's pretty cool. Let's back up a little bit. So even before that, at the age of 5, Dan, I'm not even going to ask you that question about what you thought about science at the age of 5.
Me? I wasn't thinking about science.
Neither was I. So tell us about this California State Park trip and how it got you interested in science and space.
Yeah, that was neat. My parents took me to a state park where they had an astronomy night. And so the astronomers that were volunteering would bring their telescopes and set them up, and families could walk around, and they would show you a particular group of stars. And I mean, at 5, these things can be like really impressive, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is so amazing. And, and somebody said, well, you could be an astronaut someday and fly in space. And I was like, oh, obviously I'm going to do that. But, I liked rocks at the same time. I ruined a lot of washing machines with the rocks in my pocket. And I liked biology. So, I told everybody when I was a kid, I'm going to be an astronaut, a biologist, and a geologist. And everybody goes, oh, that's
nice.
So cute. It's cute when you're 5, right?
Yeah.
When I was in high school and trying to figure out what I was going to do in college, then the realism steeps in. And it's like, well, you're probably not going to be an astronaut. That's a job that a small number of people have. Also, you can't major in astronaut in college. So let's think about more of a practical career.
Nice.
And I was interested in viruses, so I went into biology.
Nice. So talk to us about washing dishes as a grad school researcher.
Yeah. When I started college, I went to UC San Diego as an undergraduate.
Okay.
And like I said, I wanted to study HIV research. The problem is, to work in a lab, usually you need lab experience. So it's this catch-22. It can be very hard to get your first lab job. And so I looked up which labs at the Salk Institute and UCSD were studying HIV, and there was one. And so I sent in my resume that said things like, I folded clothes at a store one summer and, mowed lawns. They took a chance on me. They interviewed me and they said, look, you're not going to be doing lab work right away. Like, this is a process to learn this. So I started out washing dishes in the lab. You've got to wash all the glassware, and then you have to sterilize it. So you have to run this big autoclave machine,
Nice.
and put chemicals together and make lab solutions. And so I spent a while washing dishes until it looked like I was trustworthy enough to handle a real experiment, and they started training me on how to do those experiments.
So you really weren't washing dishes. You were in the lab, but just doing the.
Everybody
the
starts in the
bedroom.
mailroom.
That's
Oh,
right.
I was,
That's right.
but I was actually washing dishes. Like I had my little scrub brush and I had the glassware, and I washed the dishes and rinsed them and put them in the autoclave.
Yeah. So, ma'am, when did you actually start collaborating with the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases? That just sounds terrible. I mean,
USAMRID.
Yeah, right.
So you got it right.
And tell us, what did you do there? What did you do for that team?
Yeah, in grad school, I'd been studying HIV, and in grad school, I wanted to switch viruses. My mom was always worried about me working in the lab on HIV, and so I said, "Okay, Mom, I'm gonna switch viruses." I think she thought that meant I was going to do something less deadly. Instead, I switched to Ebola and Mpox and smallpox. So, my poor mom.
Yeah.
She loves my career choices.
You don't lick your fingers at the end of the day after doing that. I suppose.
No. She's proud of me, but she says I give her a heart attack every now and then. So I switched to working on pox viruses like Mpox and smallpox, and filoviruses like Ebola and Marburg. And really, one of the very few places that you can work on those, it has to be inside a biosafety level 4. And the lab that I worked on at Stanford had a collaboration with USAMRID, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to start a new project on pox viruses," and that sounded really exciting to me. So I think I was about 21 or 22 when I started visiting USAMRID as a visiting researcher and getting trained to work in the biosafety level 4.
Yeah. So you were a graduate student at this time.
I was a
part of
graduate
your
student.
research. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I was great. I wasn't old enough to rent a car. So when I went on TDY, I had to pay the extra fee to rent the car. And then I go into the biosafety level 4 and work on Ebola.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to first become an astronaut?
After graduate school, I actually started my own lab. I was kind of like a faculty member at the Whitehead Institute at MIT because I wanted to continue to research viruses, and I continued to work with USAMRID my whole career. And we deployed out to the Democratic Republic of Congo and did a lot of those kinds of things. And I was actually writing a grant. A lot of this research is grant funded, and that's actually interesting. People think the Army has all this money and everybody's just gets their money to do their research, but it's actually competitive. You have to write a grant. You have to show that your scientific work has some merit to it. And so we were writing a grant, and I'll just say the grant wasn't going well. I was writing this with a collaborator at USAMRID, and she called me up and she said, "Kate, this grant's going so bad. We're going to lose our jobs. We're going to get fired. So I've been looking at new jobs online. And there's applications to be astronauts online. We should apply to be astronauts." So I applied to be an astronaut that night. I called her back the next morning. I said, "I got my astronaut application in. Did you get yours?" And she goes, "You don't always know when people are joking." I was kidding about that. And I said, whoops, yeah. I hit submit, but don't worry, they're never going to call.
So you didn't think you have a chance of being accepted?
Oh, not at all. I mean, I was a biologist. NASA historically hadn't hired, they hired a few, but a very small number of biologists. And even though a scientist with a PhD or a master's degree qualifies to be an astronaut, I just didn't think they would be interested in my area of expertise. And also, I was like, I'm not smart enough to be an astronaut. I mean, who would ever take me as an astronaut, right?
Join us in Honolulu, Hawaii this May for LandPack, AUSA's premier event focused on the Indo-Pacific region. Hear directly from military leaders, allies, and industry experts shaping the future of land forces in the Pacific. Network with top defense professionals and explore the latest innovations in land power. Don't miss your chance to be a part of this critical conversation in paradise. Register now and learn more at ausa.org/landpack.
Welcome back to Army Matters. Now, Kate, in the teaser, you talked about your first time in space. I loved it. But what was the rest of your mission like? And what was your job while you were up there?
Yeah. The first time you go into space, it's like all of a sudden you've turned into a 2-year-old because you don't know how to locomote, right? You're not walking anymore. You got to fly like Superman. And, as much as we think we can do that in our dreams, it's actually really hard. You got to learn how to do that. You don't know how to feed yourself. I had a hard time putting my shoes on. Normally on Earth, you bend over or you sit down, you put your shoes on, right? Well, you're not standing up in space and there's nowhere to sit down. So I kind of like hunched up and tried to put one shoe on, but you have to stabilize yourself in space. You got to be holding on to something. So both hands were trying to put the shoe on. And I started just tumbling over and over and over again. I'm spinning around wildly. Colonel Jeff Williams, who was my commander at the time, I was trying to put my shoes on. Jeff's in the next module and he's just laughing. I mean, great, big belly laughs. He thought this was great. And I was like, Jeff, come on, I need some help here. He says, no, you're going to learn this, but it is so much fun watching you right now. I finally realized you got to hook one foot underneath a handrail to stabilize yourself. You can put one shoe on and then vice versa. So yeah, you spend a lot of time going from a pretty competent human being to somebody who can't figure out how to brush their teeth.
So what would you say has been your biggest accomplishment in your astronaut career?
Yeah, so I think I was part of 2 teams that really did some amazing work. One of them was the team that sent up the DNA sequencer. So we did the first DNA sequencing in space. And so we didn't know if this was going to work, but we developed the hardware and we were able to do the first DNA sequencing. And we use this for a lot of things now. So we can use it to detect if there's a bad microbe on the space station. We could actually swab it and get that answer within a few hours instead of waiting 3 months to send a plate of a microbe back to Earth and do that in the Earth lab. So it's got a lot of possibilities. We can study human health and disease with the DNA sequencer as well.
Wow.
And then on the ground, I've been working with a team to develop a new lunar spacesuit. So we've had our spacesuits for 40 years and they're designed to work in microgravity. And we haven't designed a planetary suit since Apollo. So we need a suit that people can walk around on the moon.
I read an article about that, and there's only so many, right? I mean, it's not like, we're in dire need of new ones. I read a whole article about that. It's
absolutely. So there's a whole group working on this. And so it's just been incredible to work with the engineers that are designing this suit. I'm a test subject as an operator. So I spend a lot of time testing the suit. And I've got a couple tests coming up. Any day that you go to work and you get in a spacesuit is a good day. So I always get excited about those tests.
Nice. So what's your involvement with Project Artemis?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Artemis is a twin sister of Apollo. So we had the Apollo program to the moon. Artemis is our next iteration of that. It differs from Apollo in many ways. Apollo went to the equator of the moon and they went on the lit side and they did incredible science and geology. We're really interested in the polar regions of the moon. So the moon is like this Rosetta Stone of the solar system. It traps all these incoming solar particles. It traps 4 billion years of rocks are there on the moon. We can't find those rocks anymore on the Earth. And so we want to go explore this, but that's an order of magnitude or 2 more difficulty because we're trying to land on the poles. It's like trying to land something in Antarctica. It's dark. The temperature extremes, it gets down to 40 Kelvin on the moon. Humans have never been anywhere that's 40 Kelvin before. So
what does that equate to?
Oh, very, very, very cold. I don't have the exact number.
Very cold.
I don't know. So the Artemis program is set up to send humans back to the moon, and it's incredibly exciting. And we want to go there to stay. We don't want to just go visit like Apollo did. We want a permanent lunar base, and then we want to go on to Mars. These are the goals. So I've been working a lot on designing the spacesuit for the moon, and that will form the basis of the spacesuit that we eventually design for Mars.
Nice.
Your stepfather, Barry Beisner, served as an Army Reserve chaplain for a decade. What did you learn from him about the Army and the value of service?
So people say, who are your heroes? And Barry really is one of my heroes. I remember him bringing home MREs,
nice.
And
we call them G.I. Joe Happy Meals at home.
Yeah. But as a kid, you think it's so cool. You open it up and there's all these little packets. Like it's a fun thing to play with. I just remember him talking about his time in the Army, and he really valued it. He said that it was a way, so he's a chaplain, he's a minister in his professional life, and he felt like it was a way for him to connect to people And he said this let him serve a whole different group of people outside of his congregation and connect to people and just the number of people that you meet when you're in the Army, right? And he's always said it's like a very small role, but you can have a really big impact if somebody's really struggling or they need to talk. You can help people that are sacrificing and putting their lives on the line.
So how does your training in the Army Reserve help with your NASA career?
It's amazing. It's a two-way street, right? I've told you a little bit about what it's like to work in space, and this will probably sound familiar for a lot of operators, right? It's you train for a while, you go execute your task. It's tough. You're under pressure. You're probably wearing a bunch of heavy gear. There's a lot of commonalities there. I've came into NASA as a civilian. I was a civilian my whole life, even though I worked at USAMRIID. And so I never had that military training. And I went to, I direct commissioned. I went to a direct commission course and then a basic officer leadership course. The direct commission course was February at Fort Sill. So there was a lot of, push-ups in the mud at 4 a.m. with the wind screaming around your head. And
that's the good stuff.
It's type 2 fun, right? Yeah. It's fun when it's over. Yeah. But it's about building resilience and grit. And those are the kinds of things that you need in space. The Army teaches leadership in almost everything you do in big ways and small ways. I mean, there's the sort of overt leadership training. I got voluntold to be a platoon leader at this basic training.
Nice.
This was Army medical basic training. So the week that we gave doctors guns and sent them to the gas chamber was the week that I got to be platoon leader. So that was some serious stuff. And I learned more from that experience, I felt like, than I had learned in years at NASA, because at NASA, we're oftentimes training to be an operator, and we do leadership training, but we don't necessarily put people under the dangerous conditions that we see in space. And as we say in the flight world, you're never going to die in a sim. It's always in the back of your brain that you're just, you crash the plane, you're going to get yelled at and you're going to get up and walk away. And so being in that high pressure operational environment, that has influenced me so much. I think it's made me a much better astronaut.
Nice. That's excellent.
Nice.
So, ma'am, you currently serve with the 75th Innovation Command. Tell us, what is your job there, and what is some of the important work that the team does?
We work for the Office of the Chief of the Army Reserve and Army Futures Command. This is a pretty recent unit that's been created only in 2019. And the idea was, let's use the Army Reserve as a way to get people that are doing things in high tech or cutting edge engineering and science and get them into uniform and bring them into the Army, but have all of their skills that they've developed in their civilian career. And so the unit focuses on things like AI and machine learning, energy, cyber, robotics, autonomy. I'm in the medical bio, so medical, biodefense, synthetic biology group. So we've got these incredible people who are, they're cybersecurity for the Army, and they're out working for some of the major tech companies in their civilian job is cybersecurity. So it's really incredible. We're the Innovation Command. So we're trying to figure out in these areas that are very cutting edge, we're deep tech, bleeding edge of technology, what are ways that we can improve processes, bring the most cutting edge techniques, into the DoD, and where are we being inefficient? So, things get siloed sometimes, and where can we cut across areas, for example, to bridge AI and machine learning with biology to come up with a faster therapeutic for a virus? Or how can we use synthetic biology, which is using bacteria to produce something, to go really far forward and produce something that a soldier would need far forward?
I want to ask you a question. All right. So you're doing biology that just blows my mind. You're doing infectious diseases. You're in space. You're doing innovation for the Army. What does Major Kate do when you're not doing that? How do you get your brain to like shut off every once in a while?
Yeah. I'm really into CrossFit. I CrossFit. I run.
Nice,
people who do CrossFit, I got to tell you that I do CrossFit. So,
Nice.
yeah.
So needless to say, the Army Combat Fitness Test is not hard for you.
No, it's not been too bad. When I first was joining was back when they were still trying to figure out what the standards were going to be. It's like a CrossFit workout. You go in, you get it. I know that it's not universally loved, but I think it's a good time. Every time I've done it, everybody's cheering each other on. They're running people in. It's a big workout.
One last question, Kate. What do you read for fun?
Oh, great question. I'm a total nerd, so I read a lot of sci-fi.
Sci-fi. Okay,
Sci-fi.
can you give us a title? Like, who's your favorite?
Well, I've been reading Mary Robinette Cowell. Cowell has a book series called The Lady Astronaut, which is kind of like an altered timeline. That's pretty fun. I watch a lot of TV too. I will say, I kind of was joking about Netflix earlier, but I do like sci-fi TV shows. I love watching The Expanse, Battlestar Galactica. One of my favorite shows that we watched up on Space Station was For All Mankind. It was so good. We were like, there's got to be a former astronaut consulting on this. And then I figured out it was one of my friends, and we emailed him and said, dude, we're watching your show, and it's like life imitates art, imitates space. So,
Wow, that's awesome.
Okay, there's so much more we could talk about. We really want to just tell you thank you for your service on multiple levels, and we're so proud of you for what you do and what you stand for.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
thank you very much.
For this week's chapter spotlight, we'd like to focus on the First in Battle chapter located in Ansbach, Germany, and what they're doing to commemorate Memorial Day this year. To tell you more about it, we had an active duty soldier give us some details.
I am First Sergeant Andrew T. Miller, and I am currently stationed in USAG Ansbach. The First in Battle AUSA chapter will be holding a Memorial Day event at the Erlas Exchange, the PX. The First in Battle gathers to honor and remember the brave men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country. The wreath-laying ceremony serves as a powerful symbol of remembrance. As the wreath is placed, we honor the fallen with profound respect and gratitude, ensuring that their legacy lives on. The cake-cutting ceremony, on the other hand, represents unity and celebration. It is a moment to achieve the strength and resilience of our military community. By sharing a piece of cake, we celebrate the enduring spirit of those who have served and the unbreakable bonds forged in the face of adversity. For me, Memorial Day is a time to reflect on the sacrifices of those who came before us. It's also a day that reminds me of the heavy cost of service and the incredible strength of our families. As a leader, I see it as my duty to ensure that we honor their legacy, not only through ceremonies, but in how we carry ourselves in a day-to-day activities. It's also important for me to pay tribute and share that with my soldiers on a daily basis by the little things that we do, by sharing stories, honoring those that we know, and even just by wearing our uniform properly and the way we honor with the flag every day.
Thanks to First Sergeant Miller and the entire chapter for organizing this important event. If you or your chapter would like to be profiled on the show, please email us at podcast@ausa.org.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Dailey, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Anthony Del Call is the producer and writer, and Andy Bosnack is the supervising sound editor. Ellen Toner is the content editor. Unzinga Curry is the executive producer, and the senior producers are Carrie Barrow-Heckes and LaSharon Duncan. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Reef. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. I'm with Sharon Duncan. Hope you have a great Army Day. Hooah!